After some technical difficulties, we are good to go here with the Summit Freelancers Roundtable. My name is Nick Bonatsakis, mobile development freelancer, and I'm here with my buddy Adam Nelson. How's it going, Adam?
I'm doing well. Design guy, Adam. Design.
Design guy, Adam, freelancer extraordinaire. So
Yeah.
today we're going to talk about pricing, right? And
Yep. I'm gonna hold on. I'm hitting the button for the tweet. Boom.
all right.
We're live. Yeah. We're gonna talk about essentially what it takes to what you expect to pay for a software development and design project, which you're dealing with professionals. Like real costs, what it's going to cost, because there's a lot of lies and misinformation out there, and we're not going to pull any punches. We've been doing this for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's not cheap.
Yeah, and that's actually a big sticking point with a lot of people. Is I think everyone thinks these sorts of things are going to end up being cheaper than what they actually end up being. So I think it's a good exercise to go through this sort of thing and kind of try to demystify some of it and why it costs so damn much.
Yeah, like what you're actually paying for, I think is pretty key. So anyway, while I was doing a little bit of research, I was reminded about this website that I came across, and I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share. Hopefully, this still works. Of a website that I stumbled across. That's essentially, it's called howmuchtomakeanapp.com, and it's a like a wizard, a little form you fill out and go through a bunch of questions and answers, and they have a running calculation in the upper right corner as you build, as you check boxes for features and basic things that apps do. This one's specific to iOS and Android apps, but
Yep.
I'm gonna turn off my Slack. I'm getting slacked on the side here.
Yeah,
Boom.
I don't see your screen yet. Did you share?
Yeah, I did.
Hmm.
It says I'm presenting. Hold on, let me do this again.
Yeah,
Let me stop.
I heard the little bling bling, but then it didn't actually show anything.
Oh, is that now? How about now?
No, hold on. Let me make sure I
It
got
says I'm presenting. Hey, it just works.
it. Yeah, I know, right? Isn't that great? Hold on. Let me just make sure I have Chrome going here. You know how great technology is. Okay, I think we're good now. I think you were frozen for a little bit there, and I think it was because the streaming software just.
You think we're screen sharing? I can't. Anyway, I'm gonna read it aloud anyway, so that it has legs beyond a visual medium.
Yep, we're
Nick,
good now. We're good. We're good.
Okay. Good. So anyway, I figured it'd be cool to go through this question and answer thing and kind of do an agree disagree situation here. This is put together. I think it's important to know this is put together from a shop called Z1 Digital. I don't know where they're out of. I could probably figure it out super fast.
Shout out to Z1 Digital.
Yeah,
giving them free advertising.
Yeah, even if I don't end up agreeing with all this, I think it's a cool tool and a great idea for lead gen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Don't know. I can't tell where they're from. Maybe they're global, and I'm not going to read the website over the. Anyway, I'll tweet out the website too because it's pretty cool, regardless of what we decide on it right now. But let's get started.
Sure.
So essentially, the kickoff with the value prop. Have you ever wondered how much it would cost to develop an app for iOS or Android? This handy app cost calculator will help you. Find out how much your app will cost in under a minute. Nick, can it really be under a minute?
That's just crazy. I'm in disbelief.
Me too. Let's start a lie calculator. Lie number one. All right. So first question is it, and I'm kind of curious, is this the first question you would ask? What type of app are you building? iOS or Android or both?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely ask that. I don't think iOS versus Android makes too much of a difference nowadays, but certainly one or the other versus both would make a difference.
Yeah, this is the type of question I would ask to just get a sense of how big this fish is right now if I was talking to a prospective client.
Yeah, and it also has some bearing on whether like cross-platform is something you'd want to talk about at all. Because if you're only going to focus on one platform and you just have no plans to go to the other platform anytime soon, then you can kind of take those things off the table. So I say we choose both because I think the vast majority of clients I work with have both or want to do both in short
Yeah.
order.
Okay. But let's talk about, so are you effectively building two different apps now at the same time, or are you in your head aiming to share a code base with one of those many products or languages that do that right now?
So I think that's a huge ball of wax. I mean, for me, I've had this discussion with so many clients in terms of like, can we go cross-platform or not? We could probably do a whole show just on that. But the kind of the popular kid on the block nowadays is React Native, which is for folks that haven't heard of it, it's a Facebook sponsored open source project that lets you write most of your app in JavaScript using the React framework, which is also available on the web. And so there's a lot of experience with it out there in terms of folks that know how to do React. And so React Native is kind of it's kind of the go-to cross-platform tool that people use. My general opinion on it is that I think it really comes down to what you want to accomplish. I tell folks like if you're really not looking to get super down in the weeds on sort of platform specific things, like if you're doing something that's like a B2B type of thing where it's like a lot of sort of dry forms and text and sort of system standard, then I think React Native is definitely something that would make sense to consider.
Yeah.
Um, Once you start getting into things like media, other like device features, Bluetooth, location services, anything where you're kind of accessing sort of more of the kind of core services of the platform,
Interesting.
the RN uh, value prop starts changing just because you end up having to bridge a lot of that stuff into platform specific anyway, and so ultimately you probably end up with a lot less common code than you'd want to, and at that point you might as well just write things native. And then of
Yeah.
course there's sort of considerations around like do you want to be on the bleeding edge of each platform, because like RN tends to lag a little bit since they have to wrap everything when these uh, companies put out new SDKs and all that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
always a discussion. It's definitely something there. I wouldn't just swear it off like immediately. I think some people do, and some people go full the other way, where it's just we should use React Native for everything. I think it totally comes down to the project.
Yeah.
So
I've only had to pick up one React Native project from a development team um, about a year ago. And from a design perspective, they just made some of the stupidest decisions I've ever seen. And it's a possibility that they couldn't get the things I'm used to getting for free, and they chose to roll their own, solutions for very common tasks being executed on device. And I was just like, why did we do this? Why did they do this in the first place?
yeah, it really like there are some things where you just take for granted that you got for free on the native platforms that they've reconstructed for React Native, and you just some of them are just not 100% there, and so you get this like if you don't do a shit ton of work to style it properly, you end up with this thing that sort of looks like a web app but not really, and it's like kind of in between like a native app and a web app, and um,
Yeah.
it's not to say that there aren't React Native apps out there that are like really polished and look really good, and it's really hard to tell the difference, but I think I don't know,
Well,
it's
Facebook's probably one of them, right?
yeah, I think the interesting thing about Facebook is like they had a big blog post last year that kind of fired up a lot of people where they talked about how they were moving away from cross-platform for some of their
Yeah,
high-performance
yeah, I
things.
remember that.
I think they still use it in parts of Instagram, and they use it in a bunch of their like sort of tertiary apps like the Page Manager and Ads Manager and a bunch of these apps that don't get a ton of traffic.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, relative to their flagship apps at least, but. Yeah, so that'd be the thing to consider for cross-platform. I think for the right app, it definitely can save you on budget and time. So it's always worth talking about, I would say. But if you're talking
Yeah,
about full-on native, yeah, I mean, you're not. I wouldn't say it's like take one platform and double it, because you're gonna figure out a lot of what you need to figure out outside of like building the nitty-gritty when you do one platform. So you're going to kick the tires of your back end and figure out all the UX, UI, and all that stuff, and then
For
replicating it on a second platform is going to not. It's not going to be as much as it was on the first one. So maybe like 1.6 or 1.7 of the effort or something like that. Or sorry,
Yeah,
0.6 or
I would
0.7.
agree. If you were to go, okay, it's time to design this experience from 0 to 60, and you do one platform first, and then you do a fast follow of the next one, I would say that that fast follow should be half, if not 30% of the time that the first one took, because you should be working out all the kinks, and selling the designs through in the first one, and the second one should just be gravy, unless you've never done Android before, because most people start with iOS.
Yeah, and that's definitely true on the development side too. It's like you figure out all the odds and ends of. I mean, just going through the development process is like a collaboration a lot of times. Where you're going back and forth with the designer and the product manager and whatever, and working all these things out. And once all that
And
stuff's figured out, it's not as hard to replicate that again on a
yeah, and
development
the
project.
first time you go through the stuff, you're running across all the back end issues that need to be remedied as well.
Yeah, exactly. We need to build this out for this screen. We didn't have it. Now we need it and build it out or whatever. And so yeah, once you hit the second one, everything's kind of already fleshed out and ready to go. So it goes a lot
All right,
faster.
so give me an estimate what you think this number in the upper right is going to go to when we get both iOS and Android at the same time.
Oh, so this I don't know. I don't know. It's hard because we don't know anything else about this app. I don't know. I mean, what's their base? 50K, 60K? I don't think they're gonna inflate it like crazy, but
All right, 50K, 60K. But you're in your head, you're baking in all the stuff that an app pretty much has to have if you want to, get in the store.
yeah,
In your head. So what they do is a little bit different. They slow roll you, so you stick around. Let's
yeah,
click.
sure.
Ooh, I just clicked 16K.
Whew. I guess if you said to me, give me an app that does nothing, it just has one screen, and you do everything else.
You went in and out there. What did you say? Give me after what?
So like maybe if it's just give me one screen, but set up everything, the project, the pipeline, the app store, the base architecture, and all that stuff. Sure, 16 seems reasonable.
All right, that one screen app that no one's going to download.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's minimal viable products and there's minimal desirable products, and the App Store is a really harsh place to like carve out and get your own attention, and just so you got to aim high, or otherwise you're wasting your money,
It's true.
in my opinion. Next question: do people have to log in? An email login is generally best to start with, unless your app will have tight integration with services like Facebook or Twitter, in which case social login is better. They didn't mention Apple's rules
Yep.
on
Yeah.
that, which is interesting.
Yeah. So here's a good one. So I mean, like, let's talk about login for a second, I guess, and why this
I
adds
think
complexity.
I wouldn't know what I have no idea why an app would exist that doesn't ask you to log in anymore. Everything on the App Store is probably a business of some form, and they want your email address. And if you're putting data into it, you need a way to get your data back when you purchase the newest iPhone. And because I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe you drop your other one in a gin and tonic.
So I can give you. So there are definitely a decent amount of apps that don't require it still. Like there a bunch of the apps that I've done recently, my own apps I don't have a login, mostly just because it's friction that I don't want to put on somebody because there are
You talking
ways.
about the timer?
What's that? Nah,
Tabata
well,
timer?
yeah, the Tabata timer and all that stuff. Those are old. I mean, I haven't really touched those in a while. But like the wait times app that I did recently, like that could easily have a login. And in fact, I may add it at some point for that exact situation where you're talking about around like, well, what happens if you get a new device? Although that app, it doesn't have a ton of like personal like preferences. It's like you can pick favorite rides or whatever, and that's it. So for me, I'm like, I mean, like login would be just super overkill, and a lot of these service, like if you use Firebase or even if you roll your own backend, you can make it so that like the app makes like an anonymous user, so you can still persist things. So when you open the app and close it, it brings things back.
Is that on client side? Must be.
Well, it's both. It's client. You register on the client side, and um, it goes up to the server. So I guess what I'm saying is like you can anonymously tie an app to like a user on a back end without forcing someone to log in. Um, but you're right. I mean, most apps that are offering some kind of service have a login. And
Mhm.
it's a lot of times, yeah, it's like they want to get your email, they want to start a marketing relationship with you, and they want
Oh
to
yeah.
support, if you log in on another device or on the web or whatever. It's definitely easy to. It's a good case to be able to sync things.
Okay.
So
Well, I think the most common thing I'm coming across is a social login these days. Everyone wants a little bit of this.
yep, yep, and
So you want to make a guess? So it's going to multiply, the single price tag you're thinking by two because I think we're going in iOS, Android at the same time now. But
yeah, I mean, I'd expect this to up it by like a good 15 or 20K. Like if you're doing a good
whoa,
job with
really?
social, maybe 10, 15, somewhere in that range. Like to do a good job of this, if you want to support all the different services. Um,
Okay. Explain to me what the estimate you just gave me gets me.
yeah. So in my
Facebook,
ideal,
Twitter, Apple,
yeah,
Google.
yeah, exactly. In my ideal world, it's like Facebook, Twitter, Google, Apple. Those are the big ones.
Mhm.
You know,
And by the way, from a design perspective, you still have to let email be one of the options, and you just created a nightmare of a page for me.
yeah. Sorry. um, and so depending on how you are doing I mean, the front end's not really going to change that much. I guess the big question to me about this whole estimator thing is if it takes into account the back end work or not, or if it's like just what's the app going to cost. And I'm assuming they want to build in total cost, right? Like back end cost too.
Yeah, I went through it, before we started our call, and they have a back end question.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so
okay,
the thing about
go
this
ahead.
one is you can't do this without a back end. So that's where I'm like, and you need to add some cost to do the back end piece of this, right?
Gotcha. All right, so you said let's add 15 to it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna click social. They did not add 15 to it.
Did they add anything to it? What did we add?
Yeah, we're up to 24K.
24. All right. Yeah, they added what, like 10?
Little shy 10.
Yeah.
So
All right.
do people create personal profiles? A profile means that some of the people that use your app will have to enter information about themselves that might be viewed publicly. This
Yeah.
is something that people want to see in designs. And I'm like, I can design you that all day. It'd be very easy. You're going to love it. And then you're going to get a price tag against it.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, this sucks.
It's a yeah, and
Wait a
these can
minute,
be
you're going to have to take the picture they upload and put it on a server somewhere?
yeah, exactly. Like these can range in complexity a lot because of things like that. Yeah, it's like photo uploads, and now all of a sudden you need to figure out where are you going to store your photos, and so like if that's not something you have already on your back end or whatever, it's like okay, now we're going to integrate with Amazon or whatever thing to store them, and
Mhm.
just photos alone ends up becoming a ball of wax sometimes. And then you talk about profiles in terms of like how many fields, if it's just first name, last name, and a bunch of, you know, basic fields, it's like pretty straightforward. But then you start adding things like your birth date. Okay, now you need like a date picker, and your telephone number. Okay, now you need telephone formatting. And these
Yep.
profile screens can tend to get pretty complex pretty easily. And so there's a pretty big range in terms of what's the baseline of this versus what's the Cadillac of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even just holding on to a user's address, the address entry process, if you were to just let people go type willy nilly on address line one, address line two, address line whatever, the amount of errors that come through in big businesses that don't get flagged because you're not up against Google's API or anyone serious to verify that that address is legit, the amount of problems you come across in shipping and stuff. So there's a couple of ways to do it. The right way to do it is to integrate with a service that spits back the address and is like, did you mean this?
Yeah.
It's one character different and a capitalization perhaps different, but if you don't touch this button, we're going to get charged every time we send you something
Yeah.
because of like kickbacks or that's the wrong word, but
Yep.
so just holding the information is one thing, and you hit upon it. Gathering the information in the best usable and slickest way is paramount as well for your user experience.
Yeah, and then on this one, there's also a question of like, where's the profile visible, right? Like you put a profile in, and now there's some expectation that like it gets surfaced somewhere in the app for other people. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on what kind of app it is, I guess.
For sure. Like there are versions of screens. I think of when someone starts to talk about a screen like this, a profile screen, I think of the edit version of it first, and that's what I designed first because you have to have that.
Yeah.
And then I think of the pretty version where you're looking in on it and you tap a button to edit all the fields and it's a different UI, but that you have to have that first. And sometimes people are unimpressed with it. I'm just trying to get a lay of the land of what information we're gathering here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how to edit it before we show you the super pretty version that's going to tack on another 25K to this project.
Right. Yeah, and I think you called it. I think it's probably like, I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna keep saying around like 15 or 20K, but it just seems like each one of these chunks feels like that. I mean, I don't know what they're gonna estimate, but I would say this is gonna be. I would just call this another 15.
Okay, we're gonna hit yes. We get profiles now. It's taking forever to load. Let me rage click it. Can you hear the hammering?
A little bit. You gonna work down on your house?
No, there's a house being built really close to me.
Oh, nice.
So we broke it.
No.
Yeah. Maybe we'll go back.
Oh man, I guess your app's not gonna get built.
Maybe I should take all this really personally. Maybe it's God.
wasn't in the cards for you to get an app estimated. Sorry.
Well, darn.
It can't be your internet because I'm still talking to you. Did you break
No,
your website?
Oh, here we go. Next question. Oh, we added 6K.
6K? That seems ludicrous to me, unless it's like the most basic profile you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, we're talking, if you're going to upload an image, you don't get to crop that image. It's whatever. And the people don't think about those things. Okay, you want to upload an image and you want a face to appear in a circle. Okay, we need to make you a custom image cropper or use another thing off the shelf that does that already. And either integrating that and researching that or making it ourselves costs money.
Sure.
Otherwise, you have a picture of one eyeball and maybe a nostril.
All right, we're starting to get to the point where this thing is becoming unrealistic, I feel, but okay. Let's keep going.
Okay, well, we're up to 30K, and now we're asking, how do you make money from your app? Upfront cost is cheaper to build than in-app purchases, but in-app purchase can produce higher returns when you have an engaged user base.
Yeah.
Good luck trying to get the upfront. I don't see anyone offering something upfront that I've done business with. The best thing to do is to get a user base and then slowly find how to make a profit off of them.
Yeah, I've seen I feel like the number of upfront purchase apps you see out there is just going down. Especially, it's very rare to see like an entire business built around an upfront purchase app.
Yeah.
And in fact, like
Gains is an exception, and like some SaaS products are an exception. If you're like, this solves this problem, do it. Yeah, I see people pulling the trigger on stuff like that.
Yeah, but still, it's like it's the barrier to entry now for doing like a trial period in a free app just to let somebody get the lay of the land, give them like this. All of this stuff has been improved so much on the iOS platform, at least, and I'm not as familiar with what they have on Android. I think it's pretty up to par, but they really are driving you towards the subscription model nowadays, and they give you all of these tools, right, to be able to let somebody have a trial, and it's easier to cancel now, and you can support all these different groups and tiers and all this stuff that I just, coupled with the fact that like the Apple won't let you do paid upgrades to a premium app or like a paid app. So that means like if you build an app and charge $10 for it, and then like you put 2 years of effort into making like a big update, you literally can't charge people for that update. You have to make a new version of the app on the App Store with at the new price and drive everybody to the app.
Dang it.
So it's in-app purchase, either subscription or non-consumable or whatever. I think it's definitely the way to go for the vast majority of situations.
Me too. Let's click it. We're at 30K right now. We're going to click in-app purchases. Any estimate?
If this doesn't add at least 10K, I'm dubious on this whole this whole thing.
For me, so a lot of this is taken care of by the system when it comes to design. There's probably going to be payment gates and value prop stuff and little banana peels to pepper throughout the experience to get people to nudge people to go to a paid version, and that does take design work.
Yep.
But the actual like secret handshake is I don't have control of that anymore, which is great because who enjoyed designing those screens anyway.
Yeah, the dev side of this gets complicated. There are a few things that complicate it. One is like you need to figure out what is locked when you're not premium, right? Are there different tiers, and like how does that needs to sprinkle its way across a good surface area of the app? So you need to build that whole infrastructure to make sure that things that are locked are supposed to be locked, and then when things get unlocked, they get unlocked everywhere.
Yeah.
You need to support restoring purchases, all these edge cases around like when somebody cancels, and then there's this whole other piece of receipt validation it can be done on the client side. It's more common to see it done on the back end, and that's a mechanism that you have to implement to basically authenticate the fact that somebody's made a purchase. So it's a way that you can talk to Apple's backend. They give you a receipt for a particular user, and you can validate that that's like a legitimate purchase, and then actually use that to surface the unlock content or whatever. So it's a big chunk of work to do it the right way.
You just touched upon something I think I would ask in a meeting that was talking about this. What is the user story around me having to restore purchases?
It's pretty from a UX perspective, it's pretty straightforward. You just have a button in your app that just says restore purchases, and so it's really for like if you
from a human being's life. Why does that exist? Is it because
it exists because if you delete the app or install it on a new phone, in many cases you wouldn't know that that person has an active subscription. Like if they have a back end with a user tied to it where they're managing that, then that's probably fine, they would know. But if you don't have that, it's basically just a way to say like I installed this app, everything's locked, but I know I already bought the thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to push this button and it's going to unlock everything. The fact of the matter is, if you go through and try to buy it again, the App Store is smart enough that it'll just say, you already bought this, so we're going to unlock it. But it's more of a...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's more of a convenience, I think, that Apple wants you to have in there just because people may not know that that's the case. So... Yeah.
Okay, 30K to... What are you locking in on?
This got to be 10K, I mean, in my mind.
Okay. So it's only 6K.
Well, okay, we're not too far off. Maybe they're making assumptions about where purchases are done and that they're not validating or whatever.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Next up, do people rate or review things? Keep in mind, ranking systems can vary in complexity and thus impact your budget. Not mentioned here. What if I just want to swear all over your app and publish it? Who's monitoring the content? This is real.
Yeah, so this is a big can of worms.
This is from a product perspective and design perspective. This is all of a sudden introducing a community.
Yep, absolutely. And that has all sorts of implications across the board. I mean, tell me about the design side of it. I mean, what do you feel like? Where does that get complex, and sort of why? And then I can talk to you about the engineering side.
Well, you want to introduce quick visual ways to get all this data that you're sucking up about products, goods, and services and stuff back to the shoppers, or let's just stick in e-com for a while. So you're going to want to shoot back data viz, not just a star rating thing. Maybe you want to see, for instance, you got to look at the barrier of entry here. Like table stakes is what Amazon is doing, because you can see how many 5-star ratings, how many 4-star ratings, how many 3-star ratings. What's the average rating for everyone here?
Yep.
Ooh,
Yep.
we sort them by things because I want to read about just the people who hated it. Like well, if people do that, that's behavior. And if you don't go after that, people are gonna ask for it. It's part of the thing. And then it's super slippery because people want to see pictures of the things that real users have bought. Or let me see that remote control car in action. I want the ability to upload videos of the real thing. These things really, really, really influence purchase decisions.
Yeah, you're talking about the Cadillac here of review systems. I didn't even think about that. Embedded videos and all the crap that Amazon supports. I mean, that's almost an entire app in and of itself, right?
Okay, let's scale it back. But that's the snowball that goes through my head when we start to talk about stuff like this,
Yeah.
and the potential of threading communities. Anyway, you need a UI that is easy to. You all of a sudden almost have an inbox. You just made an inbox in your app as well, which is not a bad thing. That's a great spot to put customer service too. But if you comment on someone's thing and they comment back, you want the ability to get back to that spot that it lives on a specific product detail page in the user generated content section. So anyway, that's the snowball that goes through my head.
Yeah, I would say like table stakes for this. It would be on the product at the product level, you get to see the average star rating, and maybe you get to see a breakdown of how many people on each star rating, and then like I would say like keep it to a flat list of reviews with text reviews with text only, star ratings, username, whatever.
Yep.
No threading or any of that crap. At least for V1, and I would bet you anything that's kind of what they're assuming here.
Oh, sure. Is this a verified purchase, or are you a Joe Schmo that I hired from a review farm to come in and pump up these reviews?
I don't think you deal with verified purchases at NV1 either. I mean, maybe if you're, I don't know, maybe if you're selling physical goods, you kind of behooves you to do that, but it feels, I don't know, it feels like a reach for a V1.
Okay.
The other thing that you have to consider here too is like Apple has really tight regulations on once you have user generated content inside your app. So if you give somebody the ability to do anything offensive, you now have to have the ability to report content that's offensive and block users that are offensive. And so I would assume for a rating system, you'd have to incorporate that. Otherwise, you'd get just outright rejected.
I didn't realize Apple policed that. I thought that was
No, they absolutely police. We hit that with SportsMe back in the day. I don't know if you remember, but we did.
What?
Yeah,
No,
we totally hit that. We got rejected and we had to like build that in haste.
So, but were people complaining, or or the reviewer call it out?
No, the reviewer called it out. It's a guideline. It's a breach of one of their guidelines to not have it.
Essentially, we built an app that was an argument generator.
Yeah.
Essentially, everyone is a Monday morning quarterback now. Let's just give them an outlet in real time to talk like a sportscaster would, and then vote up, vote down people's comments, and then there's a leaderboard based on topics like the game that's on right now. And we really encourage people to argue with each other.
Yep. Which, of note, it has since been revived and it's like back on the App Store now. But people that go download it should note that it's not our work now, as far as I can tell.
I know. Oh my goodness, they changed the icon. Why did they change the icon? It was great.
I don't know.
The concept. They just did their own design of the same concept.
Yeah, which is sad because the original design was pretty bomb, if I do say so myself. I think it was.
That's such a bizarre story. Anyway,
good
luck to them.
Yeah. So anyway, going back to this, that's just it's something you have to consider, right? Because it's going to add complexity to this otherwise not super complex thing. And it's also again, it's funny to me that they don't ask the backend question here because like you absolutely need a backend for this 100%. Like this information has to get stored somewhere. Um, anyway, so given the constrained nature of what I laid out, I would say 10K again for this one.
10K. Okay, we're at 36 right now. We're up to 42.
All right, so not quite. I mean, it seems like they're going in increments about 50% of what we're saying or 60% of what we're saying. Um,
You can't really, without a feature list and, you know, detailed conversation about pretty much every one of those points we just talked about, you can't accurately price this.
I bet you if you went with the common idiom of like estimate the thing and then double it, you probably
Oh yeah,
might
you're
get
there.
close, right? Um,
Okay, here we go. Here's your back end question. Does your app need to connect with your website? This means you'll need to make an API or application programming interface. It's how all your friendly apps talk to each other.
yep. So let's say yes, and if this doesn't add like 50K, then I don't know. That's
So in your head, do you do back end work, or is it, we would probably pull? We know back end experts at the Wazoo, so we would just get someone to do this as part of our team.
yeah.
But is this something that you would take on if one of your private clients?
Well, it depends, like everything else, on the complexity. And so, like, if it's a basic thing, I've done back end work myself. I could potentially do it. If it's something that could be done using Firebase, which we've been talking, I've mentioned Firebase a bunch of times. If you guys don't know what Firebase is,
I don't.
it's basically a back end as a service. So it's a Google product. You can sign up for it, and you can hook your app up to it, and then just use it for a number of the things you'd typically use like a straight up API or server for. So it has like data storage. It has some you can run sort of on demand like computation on it to sort of do data manipulation and that sort of thing. And it has analytics and push notifications and all this stuff. So there are a lot of apps where you could power the entire app using Firebase. In fact, the wait times app that I was talking about before that I did is powered by Firebase.
Mhm.
Um, so it's very capable if you know how to use it. But again, it's still work, right? Like it's not as much work as spinning up an entire server with a deploy and whatever AWS or wherever you're deploying it to. But it's still a non-zero amount of work that somebody has to do. Um,
Mhm. Can you
so
talk to me about the how complex an API can get? In my memory, I remember writing a case study for a project I wasn't on, but I got to talk about it for Invaluable, and they did a specific kind of API that drove live in like live auctions, and if for high end art and stuff and
yeah,
collectibles.
yeah.
So talk about the differences or like what that even is. There's RESTful API and like what I've heard these terms at a bunch of meetings,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
don't like that much.
Right. So your kind of run of the mill RESTful API is what you typically see, and what that means is so REST is kind of it's kind of a convention that most people that write APIs have kind of settled on. It's just a way to specify like what do HTTP endpoints look like. Um, there's some assumptions around like how do you address a specific resource that you're trying to access, and then typically REST implies that the response format's going to be JSON. So like when you say REST, it kind of means like, okay, I sort of know most of the ins and outs of like the logistics of how to talk to this backend. And typically a RESTful API just means at the base level, it's I can save a bunch of things, I can update things, and I can delete things and retrieve things and kind of slice data in different ways via
Yep.
filters and sorting or whatever sort of thing. Um, when
And
you
the other end of the spectrum?
yeah, when you talk about things like streaming, like live streaming of any kind, or like media streaming or that sort of thing, now you're talking about more sort of real time kind of uh, functionality, and that implies
Mhm.
something different. So when you're talking about REST specifically, usually it's like an ask and receive kind of relationship between the app and the backend. So the app says, I need this, the API responds, um, and so on and so forth. Once you start talking about live of any kind, now you need a mechanism to push data from the back end into the front end, whether that be like WebSockets or, I mean, there are a bunch of different streaming protocols out there that you can use, but it certainly adds a level of complexity. And it's harder to build out, it's harder to scale just because there isn't as much like off the shelf software that you can use to just kind of spin that up. It's harder to scale because you can kind of envision that you for something that's more stateless like a REST API, it's easier to cache and that sort of thing. So yeah, I would say anything with streaming or live or like real time definitely drives up the complexity of a backend. Your standard REST thing, for the real base case is an example of what you could probably push into Firebase without a ton of effort. And then there's also the big question of like, is it just an API or do you want a web portal as well, right? Like, do you need does your entire experience need to be available on the web or not? Because that definitely impacts kind of your choice as well. So yeah, I don't
I
know.
know in the past, so we've done projects where the business comes to us and they're in the market for a native mobile project, and they're like, oh, we're not going to need API services because we got that covered. We have someone over here who does that. Don't worry about it. And then we end up in a situation where not all APIs are created equal, and the quality of the one we want to ingest and use and write to and stuff it's not up to snuff. And then like talk about that a little bit, because that's always a sticking point, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've seen that a lot. Yeah, and that tends to happen. And like the reason is because a lot of times, like if you have an existing API that powers like an existing web app or whatever thing, a lot of times you've built it with desktop or web first in mind. And so like when you talk about how to optimize something for mobile, um, it tends to be very different, right? Especially since a lot of times you're designing for a smaller screen, so you need a smaller amount of data for each screen. Data speed and latency is a concern. So like a lot of times on web, like you can make a bunch of API calls and populate some gigantic canvas with all this data. Whereas on mobile, that might be 3 or 4 screens. So you don't want to incur the cost of sucking down all that data, that you don't even need for one screen. That's something
And that's what the API's job is to do. It's like, this is all that's needed. That's what we're pushing versus here's the floodgates, deal with it, client.
Yeah, exactly. And like there are ways to deal with this. Like there are sort of proxy software that you can use where you can kind of translate that into something more consumable by the mobile side. And then there's like GraphQL is another technology that I've used before with backend folks that's really nice, where if you set up GraphQL for your backend, then the front end developers can actually just define their own queries in terms of what data they want, and then query the backend for it. So that's a really nice way to solve that problem. But yeah, in general, if there's an existing API, there's almost 0% chance that it's going to be exactly what's needed to power the mobile app. And so
For sure.
there's always some work that goes along with kind of bridging that gap. So yeah, it's something to consider in terms of pricing things out.
All right, so we're here at 42K. You were essentially at the beginning of that conversation thinking, let's throw another 42K at it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's hit the button. 10K.
Oh, Lord. I just, sure. Okay.
Okay, how nice should your app look? Custom gestures, custom buttons, and custom transitions will cost you. It's not cheap being pretty. Listen, depending on the designer, you could be blowing a ton of money and making beauty is subjective. Anyway, the options are bare bones, stock, or beautiful. I consider myself a very frugal stock-like designer. I only put the special in where it matters, because your users don't give a shit unless like it's the crux of your experience. There's only a couple of screens that are the crux of your experience.
I 100% agree with that.
People describe my work as beautiful, though. That's interesting. I don't know if I've ever seen a bare bones app. Maybe that Party City one was bare bones.
Yeah, I've done some bare bones stuff, like very B2B kind of, where it's all sort of stock. Um, I would say most of my own apps are mostly bare bones. I don't really diverge from the stock stuff too much. Um, but I mean, this honestly, like if you go with, it's hard to say what bare bones really is now. Like if you use
Sure.
Material, or even a lot of the newer Apple stuff, you can get something that looks pretty nice without, with quote unquote stock everything. Um, but
Totally agree.
and honestly, like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, that's the way to go for a large chunk of the app. Like, I think the value prop for a designer is like in my mind, is more figuring out the user interactions, the interaction flow, and like kind of what goes on what screen. Like, making something look really slick, I think, is secondary to all of that. Um,
Sure.
and I totally agree with your thoughts on like, focus on a few things to make like really stand out, and the rest of it just like don't worry about it as much, because nobody gives a
Well,
rat's ass about your settings screen, right? Like, or your about screen or
exactly.
whatever. Like,
Don't spend crazy money on places that people are seldomly going to visit.
yeah, absolutely. Um, with that said, I don't know what they're. I don't know. I don't know. Like, this one seems very hard to estimate because it literally scales with the size of the app, the number of screens, right? Like, if you say I need an app that has 5 screens with all custom controls versus one that has 10 screens with all custom controls, well, it's probably likely that there's going to be a ton of overlap. So,
Yeah.
it almost scales linearly in terms of cost. So,
Um, I don't know. I don't know. With like atomic design principles, where you pretty much invent somebody a little UI kit that can go across all these screens. You may pay upfront, but get a lot of legs out of it. So, and you're gonna have to do a good design for, even if it's a one screen app, you're gonna have to kick ass on that. So bringing it to screen 2, 3, 4, and 5, the only thing that starts to ratchet up is when you're introducing a bunch of new features. So, where I was saying, oh, there's a picture upload and now a cropping mechanism for it.
yeah.
You know, like that kind of stuff. It starts to get kludgy, and that's where the work comes in. This is work. Okay, let's click beautiful. Just see what happens.
All right.
52K. I hope we at least go up to 70K. Otherwise, I'm out. 86. Heck yes,
all
they did
right.
do a multiplier.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Do you need an app icon? Who would say no to this?
I don't know.
All right, this comes free. If you're going to spend 86K with me and Nick, the app icon comes free. Look at that. It's like getting a tie when you buy a new.
This is such an interesting one to me. Like, I mean, there are boutique like app icon or like design shops out there that would charge you like $5,000 for an app icon or whatever. So maybe you should start doing that. But yeah, most agencies I've seen will not charge extra for this.
To be honest with you, if I'm charging $5,000 for something, it's going to be a full illustration on a site that is not lifestyle driven. It's going to be illustrating conceptually a interesting SaaS product, or
Yeah.
who could spend that amount of money for a single app icon? I'm not meeting those clients, and I don't think I would refer them to somebody else. Matt Lawson, good job. That's not my kind of design. Anyway, yes, so we need an app icon. How much are they gonna? I would do an app icon for $2,000.
I was gonna say, I bet you they add on $2,000 or $3,000.
Because it inevitably comes with an identity system. What they're talking about here is not just an app icon;
branding,
it's
and everything.
identity system and a brand.
Yeah.
So $2,000 to $5,000. Thanks. Anyway, we click it. Wait a minute. Oh, we went up. We went up substantially. We went from 86K to 100K, pretty much.
Wait, so they added 14K for an icon?
I think they meant an entire brand.
Okay.
Because that's what goes through my head. If you don't have an app icon, that means you don't have any other visual identity system behind you yet.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go on the App Store, not only do you need an app icon, you're going to need the App Store screenshots, which if you do a poor job there, you're just, I mean, there's a huge opportunity there. You might as well go with. You're probably going to have to meet customers somewhere, whether you're handing out business cards, boom, there's another, touch point. Whether you have a website, another touch point. Your branding system, your fonts, colors, logo mark, everything needs to work across all these mediums and at various sizes. So you're going to need someone to do a good job.
So you think 14K is reasonable for like an entire brand and all that?
It depends on the size of the business. Let me tell you a story. I think people should be charging when it comes to identity systems based on the risk that is involved if you fuck it up.
Interesting.
Meaning, so here's my favorite one. The Gap did a rebranding, like I want to say like 10 years ago. The Gap, like the clothing company.
Yep.
And when I saw it for the first time, I was just appalled that that was just so amateurish in that it was just immediate to me. It was they followed a trend, and it was gradients. Okay, gradients are everywhere. Gap had just strong blocky stuff. They had a serif typeface inside a navy blue square, flat color. It was great. Then they went to this sans serif, probably Helvetica, with this blue gradient up in the upper right hand corner, and the number one place that icon was going to be used, that mark was going to be used, was in the nape of a shirt or on a woven label, places that it cost a shit ton of money to make a gradient happen.
Interesting.
So, and guess what? They abandoned the mark like a year and a half later and rebranded. So they fucked that up, just chasing trends essentially. And it cost them because oh man, what a mess. Anyway.
So some designer decided that was a good idea, got buy-in, and probably, I don't know, maybe the operations people that are in charge of actually like manufacturing all this shit either weren't informed or I don't know, just were blindsided by it. And I mean,
no idea what the real story is. I would love to research that one day, but I knew it was a problem as soon as I saw the mark, and because I was in the apparel game at that time, so this puts it back 10 years plus. Yeah. And yeah, I was right. They pulled it. Okay, it's past 3:00. We had questions or some other stuff, so they rolled in at 100K for all the set things we said yes to. Pretty much the creme de la creme offering from them, and I think they missed the mark by half.
Probably, yeah, because I mean, they didn't ask about any functionality aside, like they didn't actually ask about core functionality. I mean, maybe they build that into their estimate or something, but like there was nothing.
No, this tool is just to get leads in the door.
Yeah.
I'm going to give them credit. It was awesome for that. I enjoyed the experience.
But, yeah, I mean, it is ingenious for that sort of thing. I commend them for it. In fact, I may steal it at some point and do my
own. Let me pull out. Let's see if we can. How late did we start?
I don't know, 10 minutes or something like that. I would.
You gotta give them what they want. You gotta give the fans what they want. And let's see, things we wanted to cover. How do we do estimates? How do we gather scope details? These are big conversations to have. I don't think we can shove them in right now.
Yeah, I agree.
What variables makes the price go up, and what can I do, speaking as a founder or CEO, to keep things down? Listen to the experts you've hired to be the experts.
Yeah, and be willing to sacrifice things that you really want, or prioritize, right? Prioritization is such an underrated skill, especially for somebody who's like a product owner or a founder or whatever. It's like as an engineer or as a designer, like we can give you options and costs tied to those options, but like you need to actually accept what those costs are and then just prioritize, right? Tell us what's worth having in, what's worth not having in. The worst thing you can say is like, can we just do that, but like just do it like way cheaper or faster, right?
And you're like, yeah, we'd love to sign up for a headache, and you'd be disappointed at the end.
Yeah. The much better option is like, okay, well, we really want this, so like, can we just not do this other thing right now, and we'll just do this thing now, and postpone this other thing until later, right? Like that's way better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
this is where you need a good product person to have the conversation with you that, yes, we all want to drive the Ferrari, but you're not going to get your Ferrari without first building a skateboard and then maybe one of those fancier skateboards that people control with their apps these days. It's amazing. And then like you'll get to your Ferrari one day, but you need a product person to walk you through the minimum desirable suite of features that you can get to market to start gaining traction, to show your investors that look what we have. And then they throw more money at you. You bring it back to us and we build your business for you. That's what we do. We build business.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for getting out there and getting users on whatever you're building. It's like the longer you go without having real people using the thing you're building, like the harder it is. It's like it's harder to get feedback. It's harder to like, and it's just demoralizing, to be honest. Like I've worked on projects that have run like over a year without before shipping, and it's like you just get to a point where it's like it's very hard to keep going without having actual users on the damn thing. You know, it's like, is this thing even real or what? Like,
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's sad. It's sad, really.
yeah,
Watching make bad decisions and essentially burning their money.
yeah, but it happens all the time, unfortunately. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Hubris. People think they know better than to get something out to people. I know even for my own apps, it's like it's hard to not, especially since I don't really have myself time boxed. It's like I need to force myself to release things because it's like if I don't, I'll just go on and on forever. I just add this other thing, add this one other thing, and I think startups can definitely fall into that trap. And it's even more of an issue for startups because they have a limited runway. So if they don't ship and get traction, they just die. The only thing I'm losing out on is my own time. So
yeah. I think there's a parallel in the design world. Young designers will hesitate to share their work. They will go multiple days, weeks without a check-in. They will play very close to the vest and then have this big reveal. And what they don't understand is your client is very integral to the process, and the more that they are seeing process work and rough sketches and reacting to things early, the better chance you have to guide them and guide the project in the direction that they see it. You can cook the thing together versus here's what I made, and then they're like, I was envisioning something different, and then you're like, shit, I have to do it all again.
Yeah, I think and that's true on the engineering side in terms of like just how you're going to build something or what you're spending time on. But like I think the parallel message in my mind or takeaway is like silence adds risk in like a huge way. So like the more you communicate within the team and with the client, like as you go, like the lower that's the way to de-risk things because you're not spending money on shit that's actually like doesn't matter or isn't important or somebody doesn't like. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good as a cost savings mechanism, just communicate often, both within the team and without. Cool. Do we have any other questions on that list? Or I think you're right.
We can kind of talk about in the time that I have left today, but we can I think methodologies of gathering scope details is pretty cool. That's a cool topic that I think deserves its own. Sometimes anyway. Let's save that. But I want to say, hey, listeners, if you like what you're hearing and you found value in this, please share our video podcast thing. I don't exactly know what it is, but it's wonderful. Share it and reach out to us and tweet us or something. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Or comment in the YouTube video. I think we can read those.
I think Nick has them turned on. I'm not sure. We'll check. Mom, if you're listening, write a nice comment. Not like last time. I can't believe you wrote that. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for watching.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, this was a good one. This will go down in the archives as one of the better ones, I hope.
Hope so. All right, dude. Great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Have a good one.
Till next time. Not next Thursday. Thursday after that.
Yeah.